For almost 60 years, the cast of Star Trek carried a pain they rarely spoke about. They smiled at fan events, signed autographs, and acted like a close family, but behind the scenes many of them held deep resentment toward their captain. William Shatner's behavior on set hurt people more than fans ever knew. Some actors walked off the set because of how he treated them. Writers rewrote scenes to reduce other cast members' lines so his part stood out. Friendships that could have lasted a lifetime broke apart because of misunderstandings and ego. In 2025, when Shatner was 94 years old, he finally opened up in a documentary that shocked Hollywood. His confession explained why so many cast members kept their distance from him for decades, and his honesty showed a side of him fans never saw. William Shatner's story began on March 22, 1931, at 11:45 p.m. in the quiet Notre-Dame-de-Grâce neighborhood of Montreal. He was the only boy in a home with two sisters, Joy and Fala. The Shatner family carried the weight of old traditions and the excitement of new dreams. His father, Joseph, left Austria-Hungary when he was just 17 and built a clothing manufacturing business strong enough to support the family even during the Great Depression, a time when many others struggled to survive. Young William spent many days walking through his father's factory, watching the workers and noticing the wealthier families around the city. Those early experiences planted two things inside him: a curiosity about business and a deep respect for hard work. His mother, Anne, brought gentleness, discipline, and creativity into the home. She was trained in elocution, a rare and respected profession in the 1930s. She recognized her son's potential long before anyone else did. When William was just 8 years old, she enrolled him in children's acting classes, something very uncommon at the time. By the age of 10, he was performing as Puck in A Midsummer Night's Dream. He memorized Shakespeare's lines word for word and practiced them until his mother was satisfied. She pushed him hard, but that pressure shaped the voice and confidence that later made him famous. William often said that every bold decision he made came from the foundation his mother built inside him. Growing up in Montreal meant living in two languages. By age 5, he spoke French and English fluently. He attended Westmount High School, a respected English school where only about 1/5 of the students were Jewish, but William never let that make him feel out of place. He threw himself into public speaking contests, debate clubs, and school theater. When he was 14, he won first place in a provincial competition for his Shakespeare recitation. He later liked to mention that Leonard Cohen had also studied at Westmount, as if it confirmed the school was a place where talent was formed. By age 6, William was already working. He became a voice actor for CBC radio dramas, which was extremely rare for a child in the 1930s. His first role was in The Adventures of Billy Barker, which aired every Saturday evening. He performed while standing on boxes so he could reach the microphone. CBC records show that he acted in more than 50 radio programs before he was 13. His performances during the war years reached millions of listeners and taught him how to control his voice and emotions. His family's story extended far into the past. His grandfather, Wolf Shatner, born in the mid-1800s, immigrated to Canada and changed the family name from Shatner to help the family fit into their new environment. For William, that name change became a quiet reminder that survival sometimes required starting fresh. Joseph, his father, didn't fully believe acting was a stable career, but he never stopped William from trying. He often drove his son to CBC studios and watched him earn $3 per episode. William always remembered those drives as moments when he truly felt supported at home, and encouraged his dramatic side in simple ways. She created small plays for the children, and William always played the main role. These family performances, full of improvised lines and homemade costumes, helped him learn to speak in front of people without fear. At 12, he joined the Montreal Children's Theatre, a program that focused on building confidence and strong speaking skills. Being on that stage became one of his happiest early memories. As a teenager, he joined Habonim, a Jewish youth group where he participated in dramatic readings of Hebrew stories and folk plays. These gatherings were filled with culture and pride, teaching him how powerful words could be in shaping identity and community. At 16, he worked at a YMCA summer camp directing puppet shows. Even though he earned only $25 a week, It was his first real experience earning money through creativity. Performing puppet shows forced him to use different voices for different characters, something that later influenced his acting style. In 1949, William enrolled at McGill University and chose commerce as his major, hoping for a practical path. But theater always pulled him back. He joined the Red and White Review, a comedy group famous for its sharp campus satire. Their shows drew large crowds, and William spent many late nights practicing, learning timing, and discovering how a single pause or glance could change a joke completely. By the time he graduated in 1952, he knew deep down he belonged on stage, not behind a business desk. During his university summers, William performed with the Royal Mount Theatre Company in the Laurentian Mountains. The stage was small and crowded, but the audiences loved the shows. Once, while performing Twelfth Night, he slipped on a banana peel and fell off the stage, making the audience roar with laughter. That accident became one of his favorite memories. It proved that even mistakes could turn into something magical. After graduating, Shatner worked as an assistant manager at the Mountain Playhouse in Vermont. The job barely paid enough to live on, but he learned everything he could: how productions ran, how actors prepared, and how much discipline the craft required. He cleaned floors, sold tickets, and memorized lines late into the night. It was a difficult start, but it built the endurance he needed for bigger opportunities. In 1952, he joined the Canadian Repertory Theatre in Ottawa, where he understudied lead roles and stayed prepared for last-minute performances. His chance arrived unexpectedly when a lead actor fell ill moments before a show. William stepped in with almost no rehearsal, performed a powerful monologue, and earned a standing ovation. That night proved he could shine even under intense pressure. By 1954, he set his sights higher and auditioned for the Stratford Shakespeare Festival. He was hired for the entire season and paid $150 a week. It wasn't much, but it allowed him to survive. He understudied roles in Henry V and Oedipus Rex and learned how to perform Shakespeare for huge audiences. Stratford's demanding environment shaped him with discipline and technique that served him for the rest of his career. In 1956, at 24 years old, Shatner arrived in New York for his Broadway debut in Tamburlaine the Great at the Winter Garden Theatre. His role was small. He carried the lead actor in a sedan chair and tried not to stumble. After 12 days, the show closed suddenly. One moment he was on Broadway, and the next he was standing outside in the cold, wondering how quickly everything could disappear. Still, the experience anchored him in New York and pushed him toward his next opportunity. That opportunity arrived in 1958 with The World of Susie Wong at the Broadhurst Theatre. At first, audiences didn't like the show. Reviews were harsh, and performances felt shaky. The leading actress, France Nguyen, barely spoke English and had to learn her lines phonetically. But director Joshua Logan kept refining the play until everything clicked. The chemistry between Shatner and Nguyen became the talk of Broadway. The show ran for more than 500 performances, transforming Shatner from a struggling young actor into a rising star. William's path to film began earlier, in 1951, when he appeared briefly in The Butler's Night Off, a small Canadian comedy filmed on a tight budget. The production was chaotic, but it was his first time in front of a movie camera. By 1958, he appeared in The Brothers Karamazov, his first Hollywood film. Although the movie didn't do well at the box office, it introduced him to the world of major studio productions. In 1961, he played Captain Harrison Bias in Stanley Kramer's intense courtroom drama Judgment at Nuremberg. Filming in real Nuremberg trial rooms gave the production emotional weight. Shatner's performance stood out, and the film became one of Hollywood's greatest works. By the early 1960s, television roles came frequently. In 1963, he terrified audiences in the Twilight Zone episode Nightmare at 20,000 feet. The crew built a life-size airplane set, complete with rain and wind machines. Shatner played a nervous passenger convinced a creature was on the wing. He even pranked the director between scenes by pretending to see something outside the window, keeping everyone on edge. The Twilight Zone episode aired on October 11, 1963, and cost about $75,000 to make. William Shatner earned $1,500 for his performance, but the payment mattered far less than what the episode became. It turned into one of the most famous Twilight Zone stories ever created, and it followed him for the rest of his life. A year later, in 1964, he appeared in The Man from UNCLE in an episode called The Project Strieger's Affair. It was filmed at Universal Studios, where wires and harnesses were used to create the look of zero gravity as Shatner raced through metal corridors. Leonard Nimoy, long before he became Spock, played the villain's assistant. Neither man knew their futures would be tied together forever, but fans loved the episode's energy. It aired again and again in reruns, quietly helping to pave the path toward Star Trek. That same year, Shatner appeared in an episode of Alfred Hitchcock Presents titled The Star. He played an actor named John Crane, a man desperately clinging to a fading career. The role felt painfully real to him. He practiced the emotional monologues for hours on the Review Studios lot. Hitchcock himself supervised parts of the production, shaping the tension and controlling the mood. Shatner earned $1,200 for the job, not a large amount, but the performance proved how deeply he could commit when a story matched his truth. In May 1965, he appeared on Dr. Kildare in an episode called To Each His Own Prison, where he played a sly lawyer navigating legal and moral pressure. He earned $1,000 for the role and spent long days walking hospital corridors beside Richard Chamberlain. The character pushed the drama toward its breaking point and added another strong credit to Shatner's growing television career. Then came February 26, 1966, when he guest-starred in Gunsmoke as a hardened gunfighter in the episode The Town That Wouldn't Die. He drew on the acting instincts he had developed years earlier in Canada. He galloped across dusty frontier sets at CBS Radford and performed most of his stunts himself. The episode cost more than $100,000 to make, a large sum for a Western at the time. His saloon shootout scene became a fan favorite among people who remembered his work before Star Trek. Everything changed later that same year. Shatner walked into Gene Roddenberry's office to audition for the second Star Trek pilot, Where No Man Has Gone Before. More than 50 actors wanted the role of Captain Kirk, but when Shatner read a simple captain's log entry, his voice carried such force and confidence that Roddenberry immediately felt he had found his star. Shatner even told him how impressive he thought the first pilot, The Cage, was. His honesty and boldness made a strong impression. That moment shaped decades of science fiction history. When the deal was finalized, he signed for $5,000 per episode in 1966, making him one of the highest-paid actors on television. He moved from New York to Los Angeles and trained himself to memorize 30-page scripts overnight. Leonard Nimoy earned only $1,250 at first, and the pay gap added early tension to their relationship. Shatner's contract also promised him a $500 raise each season, setting a new standard for actors leading a sci-fi series. During the table read for The Man Trap, the premiere episode, Shatner improvised flirtatious lines with the salt vampire creature to give Captain Kirk a playful charm. The creature was played by Sandra Gimple, and its design was so unnerving that some cast members avoided looking at it between takes. But that tiny moment of improvisation helped create the confident, bold version of Kirk that fans would love. As the series grew, fan mail for Spock exploded. People wrote letters daily, praising Nimoy's performance and the character's mysterious appeal. Shatner pushed producers to give Nimoy equal billing, and soon the credits began rotating. Both men appeared side by side in promotional material. It wasn't just about ego, it reflected how the show was evolving and how powerfully fans were shaping it. Filming bridge scenes was exhausting. Shatner sometimes spent 12 hours in the captain's chair, leading scenes involving complex action and fast dialogue. In the episode Arena, a phaser malfunction forced him and the guest star to improvise an entire fight scene. They created rough movements and unplanned reactions until the director finally called cut. These unpredictable moments added excitement to the show and helped create its adventurous tone. By 1968, Star Trek faced cancellation. Fans refused to accept it. More than 1.3 million letters poured into NBC, forming one of the most passionate TV fan campaigns ever documented. NBC renewed the show for a third season. In January 1968, Shatner flew to New York to thank fans in person. Their loyalty saved the series and set the blueprint for fan-driven movements in the future. After the series ended in 1969, Shatner hosted wrap parties and shared secret behind-the-scenes footage, including an early cut of Turnabout Intruder, which featured a shocking moment where Kirk appears to die. The scene was never shown on television. Over time, it became part of Star Trek folklore and one of the many stories that kept the legend alive long after the final episode aired. But while the show was becoming a cultural landmark, tension was building behind the scenes. It began during the earliest days of filming in 1966. When they shot The Man Trap, Nichelle Nichols originally had 15 lines. For her, this was important. Roles for black women on television were extremely limited, and she felt proud to have meaningful dialogue. But during post-production, Shatner stepped in and reassigned several of her lines to himself. When the episode aired on September 8, 1966, Nichelle had only 5 lines left. Nobody informed her, and nobody offered an explanation. Years later, she said moments like that quietly pushed minority actors aside without anyone openly admitting it. Tension grew even stronger in 1967. While filming Amok Time, Leonard Nimoy used a simple bicycle to move around the huge studio lot. Shatner hid the bicycle for 2 days. People saw Nimoy growing more irritated until he confronted Shatner in front of about 20 crew members. The argument was loud and direct, and everyone in the room felt the seriousness of it. The episode eventually aired on September 15, 1967, but the bitterness from that prank lasted much longer. Another conflict happened during a TV Guide photo shoot in 1967. Nimoy had finally become popular enough to earn a solo cover. It should have been a proud milestone. But Shatner used a contract clause to block the solo feature and demanded to be included. Gene Roddenberry was furious and wrote a memo calling Shatner selfish and egocentric. The memo was passed around the production office and became part of Star Trek history. What should have been a celebration turned into another example of Shatner protecting his spotlight at the expense of others. The pattern continued in 1968. During the filming of The Tholian Web, George Takei, Sulu, was supposed to have a major moment commanding the Enterprise. But after reading the script, Shatner changed several key sections, reducing Takei's role. Sulu's planned 8 minutes of screen time dropped to just 2. The episode aired on November 15, 1968, but Takei held onto the memory for decades. He felt it as yet another example of being pushed aside. The tension didn't stop with dialogue or screen time. Even back in 1966, during The Enemy Within, James Doohan tried to offer technical ideas to make a transporter malfunction scene more believable. Shatner brushed off every suggestion and moved forward with his own plan. Doohan became so frustrated that he walked off the set during rehearsal. The incident caused delays, and crew members later admitted that Shatner often dominated scenes in ways that made teamwork difficult. Time passed, but the stories never faded. Even in 1982, during the filming of Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, Shatner surprised everyone by doing a dangerous stunt himself. He climbed onto a high bridge set and performed a 20-foot fall onto a platform without using a stunt double. It only took 1 take, but he was bruised and sore afterward. Director Nicholas Meyer later said the moment added realism and gave Kirk's desperation more emotional weight. It helped turn the movie into one of the most intense parts of the entire series. A few years later, in 1989, William Shatner decided to step behind the camera and direct Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. The filming was tough from the beginning. The cast and crew worked in the Mojave Desert where the temperature reached 110 degrees, and people were already arguing about the story and the budget. Even with all that stress, Shatner created one quiet and memorable moment, the campfire scene. They filmed it in a studio in December 1988 because shooting outside had become impossible. The treetops were unfinished, so they had to hide the rough edges by choosing careful camera angles. In that small, controlled space, the 3 characters sat around the fire and started singing Row, Row, Row Your Boat. Shatner later said the scene represented how he felt about family, healing, and trying to fix things that had once been broken. Even though things were tense behind the scenes, this moment felt warm, peaceful, and filled with unity. Shatner's career continued to evolve in surprising ways. From 2004 to 2008, he played Denny Crane in the TV show Boston Legal, a role that earned him 2 Emmy Awards. The show became known for its unusual, dreamlike moments, especially the scene where Denny sits on a park bench and argues with a hallucination of himself. The writers noticed how naturally Shatner mixed humor with seriousness, so they let him improvise more often. His strange little dances, conversations with imaginary people, and fearless acting choices helped create a character that felt completely unique. It showed the audience a new side of him, one that had nothing to do with Captain Kirk, spaceships, or science fiction. In 1989, around the same time, he also began the Tech War book series. He originally wrote the idea as a futuristic screenplay, but studios did not want to take the risk on it. Instead of giving up, Shatner turned it into a series of novels written from his story outlines. The books imagined a world set 200 years in the future, though when the TV miniseries came out in 1994, they changed the setting to only 50 years ahead to save production costs. The story followed Jake Cardigan, a detective trying to track down users of a digital drug called tech, which created powerful virtual reality experiences. Shatner stayed closely involved in the adaptation and oversaw many parts of the production. The mix of cyberpunk style and detective noir gave the series a small but loyal fanbase that appreciated its futuristic world. During that same period, he also took on a very different kind of role. From 1989 to 1996, Shatner narrated the show Rescue 9/11. Over those 7 years, he told more than 200 true stories about real emergencies. The series became extremely popular. In 1992, one episode featuring a choking child drew around 30 million viewers. Some episodes used actual emergency footage, including one from October 10, 1989, where a 3-year-old dialed 911 to save his mother in van news. Shatner's calm and steady voice helped people understand real emergencies and how ordinary people responded to them. Many credit the show with helping spread awareness of the 911 system across North America because families watched it together and learned what to do in crises. Shatner's journey kept growing in unexpected ways. At age 90, on October 13, 2021, he flew into space on Blue Origin's NS-18 mission. The rocket launched at 10:49 a.m. Eastern Time from West Texas and reached an altitude of 340,726 feet, crossing the Kármán line, which is considered the boundary of space. The entire flight took only 10 minutes and 17 seconds, and Shatner spent about 3 minutes weightless. When he returned to Earth, he said he felt deeply emotional, not excited in the way people expected. Instead, he spoke about how fragile the Earth looked from space and how seeing the darkness beyond it made him feel sadness and unity at the same time. It became only the second passenger flight for Blue Origin and marked an important moment in the history of private space travel. Even as the world moved into the digital age, controversy continued to follow him. In November 2023, strong climate-related posts appeared on his Twitter account. They accused certain scientists of exaggerating wildfire risks and quickly started arguments online with well-known researchers. Later, it was revealed that an employee had written the posts without Shatner's permission or knowledge. The incident caused debates about public figures, who controls their online voice, and how easily someone's views can be misrepresented on social media. At the same time, Shatner spoke at COP28 and said openly, "We are dying from climate change," making it very clear that his personal beliefs were not the same as the tweets that caused the uproar. In September 2025, rumors began spreading about a health scare. Some reports claimed he had been hospitalized after experiencing low blood sugar. When he appeared at FanX in Salt Lake City, he laughed at the rumors and said the only thing that happened was that he ate too much ice cream. He warned fans not to trust tabloids or AI-generated stories and then shared a brand new adventure instead. He talked about his recent trip to the South Pole with Neil deGrasse Tyson, describing the freezing weather, the strange life they saw under the ice, and even a moment involving a shark. His energy and enthusiasm at age 94 turned what could have been a worrying rumor into a story about how alive, adventurous, and curious he still was. 1 year earlier, in 2024, he and Walter Koenig co-hosted a virtual panel together. After years of distance and old misunderstandings, the two finally spoke openly about their past. George Takei chose not to attend, but Koenig's presence made the moment feel genuine and healing. They shared memories, talked about past disagreements, and treated the event as a small step forward. Fans from all over the world watched as decades of tension softened into something calmer, kinder, and more honest. Then came 2025 and a documentary that many people had been waiting for. In it, Shatner finally addressed the conflicts and long-standing complaints from the early Star Trek years. He admitted that his ambition during those days sometimes blinded him to the feelings of the people around him. He said, "I was driven to excel, but it created rifts I regret." He spoke directly about how he once valued Captain Kirk more than the emotions and experiences of his castmates. The documentary combined old footage, new interviews, and reflections on how his understanding had changed over the decades. After nearly 60 years of stories, arguments, and divided opinions, his words offered something rare: real closure. Fans and cast members saw a different version of Shatner, someone who could still be bold but had also learned how to look back, grow, and speak with genuine humility.